Hello, people of the internet, and welcome. My name is Daniel, and I am a dungeon master. And today I wanted to give a new player's perspective on the 2024 Player's Handbook. I think it is very easy for new players, their perspective to get lost because so many discussions that are happening around these books and releases are extensions of discussions that have been happening for decades within the hobby. So it's easy for new players' thoughts, concerns, and interests to get lost in the sauce, if you will. So that is why I am making this video. But keep in mind, this is just going to be a brief overview of my thoughts that I have thus far on the new player's handbook. I do not personally have a copy of the book. Everything that I have learned about the book thus far is from consuming hours and hours of pre-release content from other content creators and also the marketing material from Wizards of the Coast. So do not be surprised if when the book comes out and whenever I eventually have access to the book that I read it for myself and my opinions change. That is natural and that's going to happen. So, just be prepared for that, I guess is the best way of putting it. But I think that is all the disclaimers out the way. You primarily will more than likely know me from TikTok if you're watching this video. So I'm almost at 10,000 over there. So if you follow me over there, that'd be great. It helps out. But I wanted to make this video on here because this is the best place to post a long form video discussing my thoughts on the new player's handbook. And keep in mind, this is going to be a certified yap session, baby. If you do not want to hear me yap continuously for quite some time, no fanfare, no fancy edits to help stimulate, maybe you got to put this on like a podcast or you're going to have to exit out the video. I don't know what to tell you. This is going to be a straight shooting video going topic to topic and calling it a day. All right. There's nothing special else going on with it. All right. Certified yap session. I got to get some aqua. But with that being said, let's start with our first topic, which is, should new players buy the 2024 Player's Handbook? And you're going to find out with me, as I will say with most things, it's a bit complicated. And let's break down the type of new player that we're discussing, right? There are new players who, at this current point in time, are interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons for the first time. They've never played, they've never hopped online, they're maybe considering about getting their group of their friends together to play. And that's what's happening right now, right? But they have not picked up the dice, the DM screen, whatever you want to call it. That's one group of new players. The other group are people like me. I've been in this hobby since 2021. I'm definitely a newer player. When you're considering I've played with people who've been playing since 2nd, 3rd edition, yada, 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 all that jazz. So there are people like me, built up a little bit of a library, got a little bit of experience under our belt. We got a few games, ran a few campaigns, the whole 9 yards. But to say that we are like truly invested in this hobby to the degree that other people are, that's just not the case. We are still the babies, if you will, not to infantilize our perspective or anything like that. But when it comes to the experiences that we've had, it's not that many as compared to people who've been in this hobby for decades, right? And that shapes and warps and contorts their perspective and their thoughts and their experiences. And that's important to recognize, right? And it's also important to recognize that the way our experiences are shaped are going to be completely different because we're doing this in the digital age, right? So things are going to get pretty interesting when we start talking about those differences. But regardless, those are the two types of new players that I'm trying to focus on with this question. So let's start with that first group, right? Let's start with the group who's never played the game before. Should you buy it? The first question you need to ask yourself is, do I actually want to play Dungeons and Dragons because I want to play the system, or do I want to play it because it is the most popular game in the TTRPG community, right? And that's an important question to ask because you might find yourself in the situation where you realize, oh, after researching other systems, I think Kids on Brooms is better for me. or Pathfinder fits more with the tactical aspect of our group, or an entirely different game in general, Vampire Masquerade, all this sort of stuff is conducive to the type of stories, the type of experiences, the type of game that my table and I want to play. Make sure that you actually want to play this game because you want to play this game mechanically, and not just because, like me, it was just, the first system that you were introduced to, and, Critical Role's what got you into it, or Dimension 20 that got you into it. Take a look at these other systems, look at other live plays of other systems, and see if maybe those will fit your table better first. Then the second question you need to ask yourself is, do I financially want to support Wizards of the Coast? Because you need to research if that is a company you want to support based off of Hasbro's business practices and the way they've treated their employees, the layoffs from the OGL situation to how they have seemingly have been promoting themselves to have changed and are on a path of course correction and being more pro-community. Check if you think their actions align with the changes that they said that they have been making in the company, and if you really think that Wizards of the Coast deserves your money and that you should buy that book, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So those are the questions you should be asking yourself before you even considering opening up the cart or opening up the website, right? And then lastly, should a new player buy it? Right? Saying that you're like, okay, I'm considering it. I want to get into D&D. I want to start with the 2024 version. I would still even say, don't buy the book yet. If you are dead set on getting into the hobby and you don't want to get the current version of 5e, right? Don't get the new player's handbook right away, because it would be foolish to get the player's handbook on how to play the game, but months later, you have to wait for months before you get the player's handbook. And sure, the Dungeon Master's Guide. And sure, you can adjudicate the game using the rules from the DMG that are currently available and out there, online, or using the previous edition with 5e. Yes, you could do all that. However, what if when the 2024 version of the DMG comes out, you find that the rules are completely different on how they adjudicate certain things and you don't really like it, right? Or if you're fully committed into that, there might be a little bit of a learning curve. Maybe things are adjudicated differently in a way you're like, oh, I do have a learning curve. I have to rethink how I adjudicate rules and handle certain situations and certain rulings. So wait for all of it to come out. For the DMG, the Monster Manual, and the Player's Handbook. Wait for it all to come out before you know if this is something you want to purchase, because it could all come out and then you'd be like, wait, what they did with Monsters completely destroys everything about the balancing that they were trying to achieve, or players are too overpowered and all that sort of stuff, yada, yada, yada. The way the DMG tries to tell you to adjudicate and handle things is horrible based off of the way that the monsters are balanced or the players are balanced. It would not behoove you to go ahead and purchase how players are supposed to play the game when there's not the current book out yet for how game masters should run the game. So for those group of new players, those who've never played, I'd recommend waiting. If you want to play, you are desperate to play D&D specifically right now, everything you need to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is available right now. Everything. For free. For free. You don't have to spend a penny to try to play D&D. And if you want me to, I can make a video showing you how to do that. And I'm talking the whole 9 yards, not even having to use a pencil and paper. You can do everything you want to do with D&D right now, online, for free. It does not matter. Whatever class you want, whatever book information you want, you can do all that right now. But with that being said, let's talk about the next group, which is the group like me, who have been playing 5th edition, and should you get this new book? And again, still my answer is a form of no, because excluding the answer that I gave previously about all the information not being out, which is part of it, right? Another thing is that most of the 2024 Player's Handbook is this amalgamation of everything that's been released in 5th edition. It's a little bit of the race changes from Mordenkainen's books and Monsters of the Multiverse, and it's a little bit of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything rules, along with some common house homebrew rules and all that sort of stuff. It's all of these very common things that we have been using that have either been used in home games or released in other books that are there to give players more options. It's basically all of those combined with revisions and streamlining. So it's like, if you already own all that content that the book is based off of, there's really no need to get it. And if you like a certain change that's made, say you like the way that spells are handled, say you like the way that the classes are and all that sort of stuff, then just use those rules. Just make a character using those settings. You can do all of that without having to buy the book. You can just take that information of those key changes that you like and then just implement it into your game and then just call it a day. There really is no need, if you already have so many of these books, to get this newer book. And even still, when the inevitable shift happens, when more and more people start switching over to the 2024 version, it's almost identical. There really is no need to do that. I know that was a lot and it was very long-winded, but it's very important that we get that out the way. And it's an important discussion. It's important to get that leveled look at if this is really something that new players actually need. You know what I mean? So I know it's a lot, but it's an important discussion. So up next, what do I think about the Player's Handbook? Do I like the new Player's Handbook? Answer is yes. I think it's good. I think the things that I've seen from it, the changes that have been present, the spell reworks, the class changes, I have enjoyed what I have seen. This is not like some glowing endorsement. I think it's just taking the best parts of the books that have been released in, the past 10 years of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, putting it in one book and then making it more streamlined, making the words easier to understand for certain spell interactions, getting rid of clunky descriptions of certain things, and making the classes in the game more appealing to stick with rather than to just multi-class immediately out of it. So not just like, front loading everything into a class, making classes feel more rewarding for sticking with them. I think they accomplished that. And I like a lot of those changes and will implement a lot of those changes in the games that I play, regardless. So I'm a big fan of a lot of the changes they made, and I think that the design team that was working on this book, this is some of the best work that they've done. I think that this is really good work. But like on the scale of, everything that I've said previously, like, let's keep it into perspective. Like, I'm not saying like this, oh my God, he's talking like this is the greatest book ever made. It's like, no. In the objective that it was assigned of not trying to reinvent the wheel and make a 6th edition, although after getting all this, I still would have preferred a 6th edition. And this is coming from someone who just started with 5th, right? Even with all of these changes, okay? I think their mission that they had of making 5e even more accessible and even more streamlined and taking the best changes that have been throughout the history of 5e, that goal right there, I think they accomplished that very well. And I do like what the design team has done with a lot of the classes. And I think this design team is talented. Divorced from Hasbro, divorced from the higher ups at Wizards of the Coast who make, those decisions that we as a community do not like. Just the team itself working on this book, I think, did a good job. That's it. What do I not like about the new Player's Handbook? That's enough praise. What do I not like about it? I I think this section will grow longer when I've actually got my hands on the book. For now, I just have one. Put the light in the shot. For right now, I just have one big grievance with the player's handbook, and that is backgrounds. And it's only one part of the backgrounds that I really have a problem with. But to keep it very concise and to keep it very simple, in the 2014 Player's Handbook, there was an option for custom backgrounds. In the 2024 version of the Player's Handbook, that option does not exist. And if you want a custom background, you have to buy the new Dungeon Master's Guide that will come out later. Okay? Yes, there are rules currently in the 2024 version for how you can take the backgrounds from the 2014 version and implement them into the current version. That's not what I'm discussing. I'm talking about the fact that they have this new system for how backgrounds work, where backgrounds include a origin feat and a designated set of ability score increases. I don't think you should make the system so different and so crucial to character building and not have the option for the customization to be there. That to me screams like, what is like a penny pinching way to get players to get the DMG, and like the worst case scenario of just like, yeah, we're just trying to find any way possible to make sure people spend more money on other books. Like that's almost like cynical way to look at it. But it's just very frustrating to me because you as a consumer are paying for a product that is supposed to tell you how to be a player in Dungeons and Dragons and how to make your character in Dungeons and Dragons. And then a part of making your own character in Dungeons and Dragons with your own imagination is not in the book about how to make your character in Dungeons and Dragons. It's in the book about how to master the game master game for Dungeons and Dragons. And to me, that is anti-consumer. It's very simple, but it's anti-consumer. And I don't like it. And I don't like the fact that we're going backwards with pre-designated ability score increases, right? Where a certain background will only give you ability score increases to, let's say, strength and intelligence, right? It is taking the same limitations that were placed on races in the beginning of 2014 before they made all those alterations onto backgrounds in the 2024 edition. And I get it. Limitations do breed creativity in certain scenarios, right? Where by placing limitations on players, it forces them to be creative in how they come up with whatever they come up with, right? But to me, this does the opposite, and where if I want to play an orc that grew up on a farm and on a farmland, but had dreams of becoming a wizard, and I love that idea of that character, and I love the wording of how the farmer is worded in the background, right? The background of the character, right? Why can't I take that +2 and that +1 from the farmer stats and put it into stats that would benefit him for becoming a wizard? Why does it only go to the pre-designated ability scores that the farmer background allots for? Why can't I choose where the ability score increases go? I'm not even making the argument about the character origin feats. Not even making an argument about that. I think the origin feats relating to the background makes sense, right? Getting tough for such and such and this and that and yada, yada, yada. I'm fine with that. I just don't, I don't understand how we went from Monsters of the Multiverse, right? Being like, we're breaking off all the chains, make the characters you want to make, be free. And then being like, listen, this is where you're coming from, son. You only got 3 options. Like, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all whatsoever. And this could easily, and I want to make it very clear. The custom backgrounds are a very easy solution. It's like, what, 2 skills, 2 proficiencies, free feat, and all this stuff. It's easy to make. But from a new player perspective, and that's what I want to keep in mind, that's where all my discussions are coming from. As a new player, if I want to use that example of the orc and the wizard, and he wants to be able to use that and put the stats wherever he wants to, why can't the option just be there to move those stats around? Or again, if someone just wants to make an entirely different background, why isn't that there for them as the new player in the book that they bought to teach them how to be a new player at Dungeons and Dragons? I've ranted about that enough. I'm moving on. I don't like it. It's a very simple solution. It is a very simple thing to fix. I think that's what frustrates me more about it. Anywho, let's talk about spells. Let's talk about magic. Spell reworks, right? We went through, nerfed some spells, buffed some spells. I like it. I have yet to see a spell nerf or a buff that I was like, thought it was questionable. Well, I take that back. Divine Smite. Divine Smite and Hunter's Mark. Those two, I'm like, eh. Well, specifically with Hunter's Mark, how it relates to Ranger is problematic, and we will get to that in the Ranger section. But when it comes to Divine Smite and it being a bonus action, spells and all that stuff, and how it deals with the class, I'm like, I don't know. I don't really like that. I do not know. So I'm not a big fan of that. But like nerfing counterspell, I love that change. I love the way that they've changed it. I thought Shield would get a little bit more of a nerf, to be honest. I think they held back a little bit on Shield. But generally speaking, I am a big fan of the spell reworks and the spell changes, and I love the way that they have changed the wording for how many spells you can cast per turn to you can only expend 1 spell slot per turn, because it opens up some fun interactions. It opens up some fun spell combinations, especially someone like me who loves to make characters that teleport all the time, and it just makes me want to think of fun builds. I like that change. It's a simple wording change that it is a ruling that people won't keep messing up. It is a wording that people won't keep messing up and will remember. And yeah, I really do like that. I like the spell reworks. I think they are nice. And I don't recall anything being too problematic that stuck out to me. But with that being said, let's talk about these combat masteries, because this is a big part of martial increase. Do I think the combat mastery system is good? Yes. Do I think it's good enough for martials? No. I am still, even after hearing Jeremy Crawford's explanation of why they did not want to take the identity of away from the Battlemaster fighter and give Battlemaster maneuvers to martial classes. Even after hearing why he didn't want to do that, I still think that martials are critically, I guess the best word of putting it is like underserved, right? They're not getting the sufficient help that they need to bring that utility, right? Because the biggest issue is that there's a spell for everything, right? And with martial weapons, what are you going to do with AoE, right? How are you going to hit multiple targets, right? There's just so much utility that could be there if they just went for a form of combat mastery or maneuvers that gave them more to do than just with whacking a singular person, right? It's excluding the cleave ability. I just feel like there was so much more that they could have done that they did not do. And it doesn't help either that for some of the marshals that do get them, they have such a limited number of weapons they can pick from to give their combat masteries to. Like only 2 for like the ranger or something like that, 2 or 1 for the paladin. Like, it is a good system, but it is easily accessible by non-martial characters with just a feat, and it does not give the power upgrade that you think, and it doesn't give enough versatility in combat from what I've seen. But then again, I could be proven wrong as we play with these systems more and more, but I think they could have done more with the weapon masteries. I really do. I really do. I'm not disappointed, but they could have done better. I really feel like they could have done better, even without wanting to strip the battle master of their identity or make a certain amount of changes that basically feels like, well, if that's the case, you might as well just make the 6th edition. I feel like they could have done more. And I feel like that especially with weapons, like the number of weapons that are still there in the game. But we'll get into that in the next session because we're going to talk about the martial caster divide. Yay! Everyone's favorite topic in the D&D community, the martial caster divide. I'm going to try to be as diplomatic as I possibly can about this. The martial caster divide will not knowingly affect most tables. It is a discussion that ends up happening by people who play Dungeons and Dragons with a certain level of knowledge and expertise that end up having these discussions, right? Where they know the intricacies of the game, know the damage per rounds, know the outputs and what is and is not above average, right? But this issue does affect the average player who doesn't keep up with that stuff when the non-spellcaster of the group feels inadequate, feels useless, feels constantly overlooked. And yes, part of that is on the dungeon master to a certain degree to create a game that services the players and create a game that highlights their skill set and their diverse skills and gives other players time to shine. But also regardless, it is not the responsibility of the game master to fix the spellcaster martial divide. That is on Wizards of the Coast. That is on the game's designers. You are paying for a product that is supposed to be complete. One of the best analogies I heard was, I forgot his name on TikTok, but there was someone on TikTok who said that expecting the players to fix the balancing in D&D is like going out to eat at a restaurant and someone hands you a steak and it's undercooked. it's just undercooked and raw. And then just being like, yeah, but you can plop it on the grill. You shouldn't have to. You paid for the meal. And I thought that was a great way of putting it. Yeah, I don't think this solves it. Because what they've done is they have momentarily cut down some of the power of spellcasters when it comes to like the raw damage they put out. And they've also brought in line all the marshals to do similar damage to each other, not to the spellcasters, but to each other by like nerfing certain classes, like, like the Paladin, by nerfing things like Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter. But in actuality, all we've done is created like this band-aid that we think for right now is going to maintain a certain level of balance. But in actuality, what's going to end up happening is the same thing where spellcasters are going to come out on top because of their universal utility. But that doesn't mean non-martial classes have not gotten an increase in utility. They have. At the end of the day, do I think this is going to solve it? new. I think eventually we will end up in the same spot with people constantly complaining and moaning about the spellcaster martial divide. That is going to happen inevitably because of the way things are balanced. But the number one reason why it's going to get even worse is because more books are going to come out. And the problem, one of the biggest problems I have with Dungeons and Dragons when it comes to their releases is that spells keep coming out. Spells keep coming out. More spells, more spells, more spells. But you will never see a new weapon type in D&D. Not magic item. Sure, we'll get magic items, but they can also be used by martials. You'll never, by spellcasters. You never get like, oh, we invented a new weapon type. Here's the katana. Here's this, I don't know, this and that and such. New weapon types to increase the versatility, to increase the power range and different dice pools and different combinations that could be available to martials. But you will keep getting new spells. You will keep getting a new spell that just gives you an air bubble that just, you don't ever have to worry about not having to breathe. You will then get another powerful spell that does a crazy AoE or freezes people or knocks people prone. You will constantly keep getting new spells over and over and over again as books come out. And then that gap, again, is just going to widen, right? With the future of releases, martials need to get more love. Whether it's through weapon types, new weapon masteries, something. They're going to need more to keep up because as it is right now in the book, it's just not going to be sufficient over time. Well, that's all I got to say about the martial caster divide because I get tired of talking about it. I just get so tired of it, of hearing about the topic. It is an important topic. I just get tired of hearing about it. It is what it is. You know what I mean? But with that being said, it's time to get into classes. Finally here. So first class, Artificer. It's not in the book. It is not in the book. And I think that is a low down, dirty shame. And even though Jeremy Crawford has come out and has made statements saying, guys, don't worry. We've got plans for the Artificer and stuff with the new book coming out and more books that'll be geared towards the Artificer, yada, yada, yada. And they've made these promises that the Artificer will be added to the Creative Commons, all that stuff. Despite all of that, what makes this so unfortunate is because I think they would have done a good job reworking the class. I think they would have done a good job. Like, the design team that they've had and the changes that they've made to these classes and subclasses in the game, I think they would have cooked up something interesting for the Artificer. And I think that's the worst part. We could have had something cool that's just not in the book. And it sucks because it adds a flavor and a layer of play that is unique when it comes to the Artificer. And it's just, I keep forgetting what the reasoning is of why they say they can't include it. They're like, well, it was in Tasha's, but it was a thing with the dad, and then there was a thing with the dad. And the way, my bank account is set up is my checkings and the savings, and my savings is in the checkings. All these excuses. Just put them in there. Like, I'm giving a compliment, right? Like, I'm giving a compliment that I think they would redesign now the class to be easier to use, easier to understand, more functional, and more diverse in the ways to play it. But it's not in the book. And it should be in the book. And that concludes everything I have to say about Artificers. So I'm going to pull up here on my screen just a list of all the classes in Dungeons and Dragons. And we're just going to go in alphabetical order, and I'm just going to give my thoughts on the changes that have been made to each class. And give a brief overview of what I think. Barbarian is up first. I think they're really good, man. I really like a lot of the changes. And you're going to see that me talking about this a lot. The increase in utility is really, really good with Barbarian. And also the ability to renew limited resources more frequently is great, and you'll see that throughout other classes. And then not only that, there's so much flavor here now. Like the way that they have redesigned rage, and with these permal paths and being able to use your rage for different things like exploration and possibly, you know, in conversations, and using rage as like this fuel, this source, this almost like ethereal or primal empowerment to everyday things, I think is really, really fascinating. And I think that the way they've just redesigned things is really, really cool. And I think people who have previously looked at Barbarian as just the class that just bonks things really hard and can't help with anything else is going to be pleasantly surprised to see how much work was done with the rework. And when it comes to subclasses, the standout for me is the new, I think it's called the Tree of Life Barbarian, Life Tree Barbarian. I mean, being able to teleport people at will is just so sick. That is so sick, dude. The amount of utility you get is incredible. Like, I am so excited to play a Barbarian, and I've never played one before. And I genuinely really want to play one that's from this version. I think it's really, really awesome. You're going to be able to rage more, rage for longer. When you do rage, you can use your bonus action to keep it going without worrying about having to hit something or hit yourself if your table allowed that to be home ruled or home brewed, whatever. I just think there's so much here now for Barbarian, and I think it really opens them up to be a more diverse class and finding different ways to play them, and, you know, not just from a mechanical sense, but also a role play sense, and just this idea of how does this primal rage fuel you in other things other than just violence. I mean, it's delicious. It's chef's kiss even. I love it. So really, really happy with those redesigns. Up next is the Bard. Bard is a class that I have not played. And that's by choice, because I feel like there's too much expectation with the way a bard is supposed to be played. I don't know, man. But anyways, regardless, bard is still the best class in the game when you really think about it. I mean, the most versatile. I mean, you can make them a true gish, like in the best way possible. Like the updates that they've made to the Valor Bard and being able to, you know, cast spells and cantrips. You can Vicious Mockery someone, which got a buff, and then make an attack. You can give more inspiration now, more versatile uses of your bardic inspiration, getting them back more frequently. Again, getting those limited resources back more frequently to keep you going throughout the day. I mean, it's hard to really say much about the changes because Bard was already one of the best classes in the game, and now they've gotten even easier to use, and they've got even better at being as versatile as they are. Like, I think the only thing I didn't like was the changes that they made to Dance Bard. I think the Dance Bard and the Unearthed Arcana was better. Yes, it was a little too strong in certain places, but I think made certain nerfs that just didn't make any sense, especially with that bonus action attack. Being able to bonk somebody in the face with an unarmed strike, you know? I don't know. I feel like they did some weird stuff with the Dance Bard that I didn't really like. Beyond that, Bard is still one of the best. And I know it is very controversial. I've spoken with some good friends of mine who love the Bard, and they are upset that the Magical Secrets is limited now, not to every single class in the game. It is now limited to 3 specific. What is it? The Wizard, Sorcerer, somebody else, somebody else subclass. You can't get access to the full spell list. And I know that is very upsetting to some people, but I like it because it, again, is a benefit to the classes that are not selectable, so that their spell list more so belongs to them. and it doesn't feel like, what was the point of me taking a Warlock when everybody can get Eldritch Blast? You know what I mean? Okay. Bard's still amazing. That's the best way of summarizing it. they're just even easier to play, and they're just as versatile and even better at being what they do. Cleric is interesting because I think what we're about to see with the Cleric is somehow even a more massive power boost, with healing spells are getting buffed. Each subclass, I believe, is getting, in some way, shape, or form, more free uses of certain spells. Like the War Domain Cleric is going to be a demon. They are going to be a demon on the field with the free castings that they are going to get. I think that there's not many notable changes that have been made to the Cleric, but again, it's more so those quality of life things with the switching out spells. When do you get your subclass? How early do you get certain benefits? The getting things resolved with the it's like your it's not like the Divine Strikes. I think it's called the Divine Strike or something like that. It's like it's either you pick more cantrips or something like that, or you're better with weapons and armor. They got that resolved. I forgot what it was called. Look, all right, you'll remind me in the comments, I know. But I think clerics they're just flat out better. They're just flat out better. And I think, again, their interactions with this new system is going to be interesting to see just how much more powerful they get. Even though, things like spiritual weapon and Spirit Guardians have received nerfs, I still think that it's still going to be one of the best classes, and that these rule changes are really going to benefit them, especially the one with you can only expend one spell slot per turn, with the free castings they're going to be getting of certain spells, and most importantly, more uses of your channel divinities. That is really, really good. Again, it's just being able to do more of what you were already good at. And so that is going to bring us on to Druid. Druid is an interesting scenario because they did not show everybody this final version of the Druid before they released it and showed everybody the changes that they made when they had released their final push of marketing material about the class changes and how they officially came out. And it's like that meme where it's like, that's a bold choice, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out. And that's kind of how I felt about the Druid. And they did that with the Ranger, and that bold choice did not work out the same way in the audience's reaction. But I think they got off lucky with Druid, because let's be honest, the most contentious point about Druid is Wild Shape, and I wish I had a stronger opinion on it, but as a new player, I just don't have too much experience with Wild Shape. I haven't played a Druid. The players I've played at a table with people who have played Druid, but they already knew in advance what animals they really wanted to use, and that's kind of what they stuck with in combat. So it was like, and they're playing a Moon Druid. I mean, they were tearing stuff up. But I don't know how I feel about the Wild Shape changes, because I don't have the experience of knowing what is good or is not good for the table as a whole when it comes to dealing with Druids. And that's just me opening up about where my gap in knowledge is, right? From what I've seen in other people's reactions to this information, it seems that people are disappointed that there wasn't a better rework of the Wild Shape system and how it works, and making it less cumbersome for dungeon masters, with players sorting through the book all the time and having to go through the monsters, to pick what they want. It's hard for me to give my opinion on Wild Shape like that. You know what I mean? So for some people, they're going to find this as a disappointment, especially for the group of people who liked in the Unearthed Arcana that we saw. They really liked having the set stat blocks, and then you just say what the animal looked like. So a lot of people found that really disappointing that didn't go through. Like I know Treant Monk's Temple was a big proponent of that. So I don't know. It's a little bit of give or take. Like how you are going to end up feeling about that depends on like how you feel about Wild Shape in and of itself in its current state. So I'm gonna leave that word. I'm gonna let go, let God. Y'all sort that out for yourselves. As for the rest of their kit, I really do like that they have become more of the true nature's spellcaster. I really, really do like that. I like that they have. I think it's the sea, the one of the sea. Incredible. Like there's just so many incredible changes for them being spellcasters now, and really feeling like that is their dominion as the not just the summoners, right? Being a summoner class, but truly being the nature's spellcasters. The only critique that I've always had of druids and rangers is that their spell list almost entirely consists of concentration, and I do not like that. And I will admit, I know that there are some spells that were added that are offensive spells that do not require concentration, from a cantrip to more leveled spells, and that is good. And that some spells were changed to no longer require concentration. However, I still think that has been one of the biggest like buzz kills for me personally when it comes to the druid spell list. But overall, they're better, much better at what they do, and they're still going to get more wild shapes. They're still going to be able to use it more often, more frequently, and yeah, they're just going to be better at what they do. But the wild shape change will vary on how you're personally going to feel about it, right? And that brings us to Fighter. Probably tied with my favorite class. I love fighters. They're so much fun. There's so much versatility in them. And I really think that they got off like bandits with these changes. The weapon mastery system for them is obviously going to be excellent. It is going to give them so much more versatility in combat, give them so many more options. It's going to encourage them to branch out with different weapons, especially since, although for archers, it's going to be a little rough out there. I'm not going to lie to you. Because sharpshooter is gone, so it's going to be a little tough out there in the streets. And I don't really think the same can be said for Great Weapon Master, because even though Great Weapon Master, yes, there is that damage nerf, it is still consistent. And from people who've done the math, you're still going to be getting that similar damage, if not more, because of you'll be able to take on enemies with higher armor classes perfectly fine and not have to toggle off your feature that gives you more damage, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. This class and its features that were pretty mediocre, from Indomitable to the it's their, oh my god, what is it? Second Wind. When I think of Second Wind, the reason I was pounding my chest, when I think of Second Wind, I always think of Ghost of Tsushima, and when the main character heals, he just he just pounds his chest and growls, and I'm like, and then he just gains back half his health. I'm like, yeah, that's basically how Second Wind works. You just kind of don't care about the wounds, and then the wounds get scared and they just close up. That's just kind of how it works, right? So that's just always what comes to mind to me when I think of Second Wind, and I just think that's just so funny. You like, I'm just getting so angry. I'm gonna heal myself. But with that being said, yeah, they got incredible buffs. All those features have become so much better and so much more useful. And on top of that, they're still gonna be making a butt ton of attacks. 2 weapon wielding got buffs, so that is a now viable form of combat, because you're getting 4 attacks, especially if you take the dual wielder feat, which is still going to get the extra feats, more feats than anybody else. Feats for days, all right? It's just great. And then on top of that, my favorite class that I've always wanted to have this buff, the Eldritch Knight, now can be able to do their extra attack like the Bladesinger does currently, which being able to switch in between a cantrip and being able to do an attack, and the same thing for the Valor Bard, which is a massive buff for them. I love these changes. I really do. I think all these classes are better. They're stronger. Fighters are going to be fantastic. They have always been good at what they do, but now they have that extra versatility. They have so much more to offer in combat now because of it. And there's so much build versatility that's going to be there now. So I'm really, really excited. I'm really, really excited. This is one of my favorite classes, and I really like the changes that they made. And then I think that is all I have to say. And then champion is, still the champion subclass. It is it's simple for a reason. All right, you give it to a new player and you just say, look, the only thing you got to look out for is 19s and 20s. Call it a day. I get it. It is what it is, right? So up next, we have the monk. The monk is about to get the award for the biggest glow up of all time. I mean, this is a generational glow up. From the expanded uses, let's just try to speedrun list so many of these buffs because there's too many. Let's try to speedrun. Martial arts die have gone up to a D6, ended at D12. Started at D6, ended at D12, I believe. Fantastic. Unarmed strikes. Now you have 3 different options once you make that attack. You can push, grapple, or just make the attack as all of a part of that. You no longer have to do a main action attack before you can use your bonus action unarmed strike. Fantastic. Flurry of blows. Eventually, I believe at 10th level gets buffed to being able to do 3 attacks on your flurry of blows. Not only that, you're going to get better movement options because your Step of the Wind and Patient Defense are no longer going to cost key points. You can then use a key point to do different combinations of those effects. Your key points, now called discipline points, are going to be coming back faster. You can replenish them more often. They also get weapon mastery. It's great. I mean, what do you want me to say? There's no way, if you play D&D, and as much as you can hate playing it or hate Wizards of the Coast and all that sort of stuff, there's no way that hearing these changes doesn't just put a little smile on your face, right? His heart grew 3 sizes that day. You know what I mean? Like, these are great changes that the community has been asking for a very long time. And again, even if you don't want to buy the book, if you love a monk and have always wanted monks to be better, play this version of the monk. You don't need to buy the book to do it. Just get it, man. It is so cool. And even when you talk about the subclasses, right? Shadow Monk can actually see in the darkness that they make. Open Hand Monk, I mean, they're still going to be powerful, but I believe that the Quivering Palm, is it the Mercy Monk that gets the Quivering Palm, right? Regardless of if they make their save or not, it's still going to do some damage. Same thing with Stunning Strike, but also, even though you can only do it once per turn, at least something's going to happen to the target, even if you fail it, right? So you're going to get some benefit out of all of those class features, and they're going to come back more often. Like, what is there to say? They're just better. 4 Elements Monk, you are officially the last Avatar, the last Airbender. Like, you can do it all. You got the range, you got the movement, the unarmed defense. This is great. Like, this is what monks should have been from the jump. Hit die is still a little low. It's still the hit. But hey, what are you gonna do? But I think that's all I got to say. Monk is just, it's the biggest glow up out of all of these classes, and I'm happy to see it. And I think this is what people should be using from now on. There's literally no reason to play the older version of the monk. It's just not good. Like, why? So let's talk about paladins. See how the energy kind of dropped a little bit in the room? All right, let's talk about it. So, my wife, she plays a Vengeance Paladin. And I've made a bunch of videos joking about telling her about how I'm going to counterspell her. About how I'm going to counterspell her Divine Smites now that Divine Smites are a spell. And she just gets really upset. All jokes aside, it was a very bold choice for them to just show up in that marketing video and say, hey, this is how it works now. Because this is not how it was in playtest. And here's the thing. I think in the long run, Paladin will be a better and more versatile class for these changes. But I'm not sure I agree with every aspect of the changes that they've made. I like the free Divine Smite. I'm fine with it being once per turn. I like the free casting, I think, of the Fine Steed. It's just kind of weird that just like at a certain point, no matter your backstory, just like at a certain level, you're just like, ha, I can make a horsey out of thin air, you know? So it is kind of weird that somehow Paladins have become the class, not Rangers, but Paladins have become the class that it's built into their mechanics to be able to have a pet or steed. I don't know. For free? I don't know. But I don't, despite the things that I do agree with, I don't know how I feel about Divine Smite is still going to be costing a bonus action. It's just kind of crazy, especially when there are other smite spells that still will function, like the Eldritch Smite from Warlocks is in this version, and it functions just like how it did in the 2014 version, where you make an attack and then you choose for it to happen without any cost of an action or a bonus action. And I don't get why that works the same in this game, in the 2024 version. But Paladins also have to sacrifice a bonus action? That's just kind of crazy. It's already once per turn. Like, if you wanted to make it a feature like the Rogue Sneak Attack, where it was only once per turn, that's cool, but like, but the rogues, sneak attack, they only have to just meet a condition of positioning. It's a matter of positioning. And if they're not in that positioning, they could always use their bonus action to meet the condition to activate sneak attack. But always costing a bonus action, I think that's kind of crazy. I think that's kind of wild. And I don't think a lot of people are putting two and two together about those implications, about what that means. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. Because here's the thing. I'm not a game designer. I'm not. All right. I don't know how to balance it, like truly balance a game or make a game or anything like that. But as someone who plays the game, who has played a Vengeance Paladin, I know what it feels like when something doesn't feel fun. And that's what I'm worried about is not being able to use the premier feature of the Paladin as often, and always having it conflict with anything that will ever want to use your bonus action. Is that going to impede the fun? I don't know. I just genuinely feel like before we got to this version of Paladin, I feel like there could have been one more playtest and we could have ironed out something that still brought Paladins in line without feeling like such a shocking in strict, like, hey, this is how it's going to be, deal with it. You know? I feel like there could have been steps in between before that. And like, again, I will admit, I don't know what those steps are. I don't know what those changes could have been. But I feel like there could have been another playtest before we got to this point. Keep that in mind for the next class. But with that being said, right, the changes that I do like about Divine Smite, changes that I don't like. Weird thing about the Fine Steed. My God, those subclasses are juicy. Those subclass features have gotten even better. More uses of your channeling, your channel divinity, or whatever they call it for paladins. I'm pretty sure it's still channel divinity. Still going to have more uses of that. Spell casting at level 1. Vengeance Paladin being able to use their Vow of Enmity without costing an action or a bonus action is absolutely disgusting. I like that this opens up more versatility for paladins that are dex-based. I like that this opens up more ways to play paladin, more ways to use paladin's features, and there's still going to be a very strong class. You're still going to have very diverse smites that you can use, and well, now you have more incentive to use them and not just use regular Divine Smite all the time, because you know you'll be sacrificing damage for different features. Sorry, I dropped my pencil. So overall, I think it is a net positive. And I think it is going to make Paladins a stronger class and a more versatile class. And yes, it's being forced. They're forcing you to be more versatile because your biggest, I'm just going to come in here and drop big damage feature has been greatly nerfed. So, hey, I'm open to doing more playtesting with this new version to see if in the long run these big old nerfs were worth it. But like I'm in like this tentative question mark place with Paladin where I'm like, there should be pretty good for everybody who plays Paladin, but also we'll see how it goes. Well, let's talk about a class that is not really let's see how it goes for a lot of people. Let's talk about a class that's been going through a lot of controversy. Since that big old marketing video was announced, let's talk about the Ranger. You remember when I made that joke earlier in the video when I said, bold choice, Cotton, let's see how it plays out. Well, they did that with the Druid, okay? Went pretty well. People didn't complain too much about it, except there are still debates about the wild shape. Paladin, whoa. Whoa, buddy, you think we were just going to walk by with those Divine Smite changes and we weren't going to say nothing about it, right? Truly. Their most audacious gamble was releasing this version of the Ranger. They went for it, man. They went for it. I think the best part was because it was like, oh, wow, it's surprising we're not going to get one more. I remember people saying, like, oh, we're not going to get one more round of playtesting with Ranger. And then, the creative team was all sitting around at a table. And they were like, looking over this finalized version of the Ranger. And they're probably like, yeah, we cooked with this one. Oh yeah, we cook with this one. Fans are gonna love this. I don't know why that is so funny. Oh my god. Anyways, all right, let's get to brass tacks. All right, let's be honest and truthful. Reactions aside, this version of the Ranger is stronger, more versatile. But I started talking like Obama for a second. What? Stronger, more versatile than the 2014 version. But that is only because This version of the Ranger is just an amalgamation of all the changes from Tasha's, I believe it was Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and all the optional class features mushed into this. And then they stripped out some of the choices that you had in those optional class features. And then just a heaping of reliance on Hunter's Mark. I feel so weird every time I think about this, right? Because every time I think about the Ranger, I'm just like, what has been presented to us feels like a subclass. If this was just a subclass for Ranger, like just the base rules that just relied on Hunter's Mark and using that all the time and using that to amplify damage, the idea of that, I think that is a good idea for a subclass. But this being the blueprint for how the entire class works, I don't know how I feel about it. Because I don't think it's bad. I would play this before I'd ever play a 2014 and beyond version, or a version of 2014 with all the optional class features. I would play this version before I would play the other ones. But I feel like the honest conversation we have to have with ourselves is that I don't know if there's ever a way to get a version of Ranger that satisfies everyone. And I'm not trying to give like this cop-out answer of like, oh, there's nothing they could have done, so we just have to accept it for what it is. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is everyone has different ideas of what a Ranger is. Someone may think of it as like Aragon, the brother out there in the forest, in the dirt, licking leaves, figuring out which way to go. Thumb in the air, kicking helmets, breaking his toe, fun fact. No magic, right? Then we have them as, okay, some people kind of see them as somewhat gishers, spellcaster and so. Some of them only see them as archers. Some of them only see them as lightweight dual wielders. Some of them see as heavy armored guardians of the forest. And I don't know how you please everybody. I don't know how you please everybody. And you can't, right? That's what Kendrick Lamar taught us in that one song. I have been so verbose throughout this video, and something about the Ranger just drives me to a stump, because it doesn't feel like a final version. Like, this truly feels like this is like 2 play tests away from a finalized version. It is better. You don't get me wrong. You get expertise. You move faster. You get more free uses of Hunter's Mark. Eventually, it'll do more damage. But it is genuinely going to upset people that, large parts of some of the subclasses and the class itself will rely on you casting this level 1 spell. And hey, you could say the same thing about, Paladins, right? Divine Smite's technically a level 1 spell now. I believe. I don't know. But like you could say that, but like Divine Favor doesn't require concentration anymore, and you get that damage buff for a certain amount of time. And the reliance of, if you drop that spell, constantly having to recast it, even if you do get free castings, that's still a bonus action that you have to spend keeping this up when it comes to Hunter's Mark. And it's just, Hunter's Mark is such a quandary of this push and pull of trying to satisfy people. And I don't know how you find the right balance. I really don't. But I don't think that this should have been the final version. I don't know what the final version should look like, but I think it should have had more community feedback, because I don't know. I feel like they could have done more. And I will just leave it at that when talking about the class. Subclasses, freaking awesome. Fey Wanderer, amazing. Love the teleporting. Love the spells. I do love that. Gloomstalker, still basically the same, a little less damage, but I like that it's just a limited number of times you get to do extra damage. That keeps it simple. It's still going to be a super powerful subclass. Beastmaster, still requiring, that also requires your bonus action to tell it what to do, which is so, I never like that. I never like that in any version of a summon. I don't like using my bonus. It's just, I don't like it. I don't like it. I like just free action. Hey, attack. You know, like I hate that. Whenever I'm playing, whenever my players are playing, like, I don't like them having to use their bonus action to tell their animal to do something. I just think that's just so silly. I just think it's so silly. It's not fun. It doesn't break the balance of the game that that person now has their bonus action to be able to do something else with it other than just tell it to do something and not just have it sit there. I don't know. Anyways, Beastmaster is just weird. I don't like it. I think on a fundamental level, I don't like the way Beastmaster functions. And I feel like that subclass could have used more TLC. Like, I like the Drake Warden. I love the Drake Warden. I think that's a better template. But also at the same time, I think that, too, I don't like the bonus action reliance. Very bonus action reliant. It's going to be a lot of people just house ruling stuff for the Ranger. And that's just how it's going to be. I'm done talking about Ranger. I've been hung up on it for too long. All right. I give it a question mark out of 10. Rogue! Sorry, my dog's at my feet and I just scared him awake when I did that. Rogue. Rogue is like, Rogue got a bunch of cool stuff. They got weapon mastery, the new cunning strike feature. But it's like watching someone go to the gym and do all these weights, all right, and get this new workout regimen. And they're just like, yeah, you know, I'm stronger now than I was before. And you're like, yeah, you are definitely stronger than you were before. More, even somehow more versatile than you were before. And more nimble. And you've been working really hard. But you are still the weakest guy in this gym. That's kind of the rogue. Like, I am super excited to play this new version of the Rogue. I like being able to sacrifice damage, which you don't get a lot of. Sacrifice my damage to be able to do some sort of special effect on my dice to get some sort of special effect out of my sneak attack. I like that, right? I like being able to have weapon mastery, which will give me cool things to do and let me be able to double attack with daggers and all this sort of stuff and take the stuff from Tasha's Cauldron to everything, giving me a steady aim feature. I like all of that. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's great. Give me more. But it is still not enough to keep up with the rest of the cast. And that's just what it is. All right. And I fundamentally do not understand why they will not Just give rogues an extra attack. Just give them an extra attack. Just give them an extra attack. Who's he gonna hurt? Who's he gonna hurt? They still won't be able to use sneak attack on a second attack after they've already used it. Limitations will still be. It's just Jesus. Hey, help the boy out. Spot him at least. I mean, help him lift. My God. I don't know why they just won't do it. I don't know why they won't do it. And they need it. They need it. Because when we're just strictly talking about the combat role of the rogue, it is still going to come up short. It will still feel more powerful and more versatile than playing the previous version. But it's still gonna come up short. Okay? It just is. It really just is. But with that being said, outside of combat, rogues are still going to be very versatile. They're still going to be a great benefit to the team. They're going to be able to do a whole bunch of cool stuff, and that's not going to change. I think rogues are better than they were before, but they're still going to be pretty weak. And there's no way to get around that, unfortunately, because they didn't want to give rogues more tools to do more damage or just up the sneak attack damage, you know? It's just not going to compete. But doesn't mean it won't be fun to play. All right, let's keep that in mind. But speaking of fun to play, let's move on to the Sorcerer, who is probably about to become the strongest class in the entire game. Their scaling on damage is about to go through the roof. Like, the sorcerer's, I think it's the sorcerer's burst ability now. It's going to be able to imbue their attacks and help them deal extra damage or get advantage or whatever it was. Like, sorcerers are about to become so much more powerful. The spell, and specifically the subclass rebalancing, to give them with those abilities and the more castings of certain abilities, like, sorcerers are going to outpace everything at this point because they are just going to be so powerful and have so much access to so many spells on top of meta magic. And I think it's the fact that since Wizard doesn't really change much, by default, Sorcerer keep getting more spells and Sorcerer getting more of these class feature changes. Inevitably, just power-wise, they are going to go up. Even when spells are getting nerfed and the damage is trying to be nerfed across the board with certain spells, they're still going to get more powerful. They're getting a new cantrip. They're getting all these features. Like, the subclasses are really, really good. It's incredible. The Draconic is incredible. Like, I can see it happening within like the next year or two. There are going to be people just being like, sorcerers are the most broken class in the game. They're way too powerful. I can see it happening. I can see the writing on the wall. Warlock, another class that got buffed to be more versatile, to get more uses of the things that they have. I like being able to make the packs a part of Eldritch Invocations. You're going to get more Eldritch Invocations. I think you get, 8 by level 5 or something like that? Like something insane. That way you could take Pact of the Blade. You can take Pact of the Chain too. You're going to be able to use the Warlock the way that you want. And yes, there is going to be a nerf to no longer there being a Hexblade. But I think that's okay. I think the sacrifice of there no longer being a Hexblade for making the Warlock more appealing to just play by itself, making sure that there's no other way to get Eldritch Blast other than taking those levels in Warlock, I think is a better option. I think it's going to be healthier for that class, and there are more benefits to sticking with the class than leaving it. the amount of roleplay versatility that is going to be there now with these subclass options is great. All of the buffs that are given to these different forms of patrons is really, really good, and the damage is going to be there. I am really excited with these new Warlock changes, and I think, again, you're going to see more Warlocks being able to break out of certain molds and being broken out of only playing, the Eldritch Blasters, or only playing the Hexblades. I think there is so much versatility that is going to be there, especially for people who love to play Gishes, and I'm really excited for it. I am really, really excited for it. And then lastly, we bring ourselves to Wizard, my favorite class in the game, the class that I've played the most, I believe, so far. And surprisingly enough, they changed so little about Wizard. I'm really disappointed. Well, everyone got some pretty big sweeping nerfs and buffs. They knew that obviously you don't want to buff the Wizard, or that would be incredibly broken. So instead, they went the quality of life route to making sure that you can change your spells as often as possible. And that's kind of a universal change in general. A lot of classes being able to switch their spells out way easier. But it's even more so with the Wizard, and that is great. And that's really all I have to say about Wizard. And even though that is the class I play the most and I have the most experience with, they really didn't get much of anything besides quality of life stuff to make it easier to pick your spells and a little bit of expertise here and there. But that's about it. And even with the subclass reworks, yeah, you'll get some free casting of some spells. Ooh, that'll be fun. But other classes are getting that too. It's nothing to write home about with this version of D&D. So I wanted more. What was that more? I don't know. But I would like to have seen more. But that class for Wizard is basically the same. But there's not much else you could add or change. Because Wizard very easily has the capability, well, it would easily have the capability of becoming the most broken, most powerful class in the game, and it currently already is the most powerful class in 5e, especially when you have options like Chronology Wizard and Blade Singer and all this sort of stuff. But I think that's going to be it for all I have to say about Wizard. I think that's it. It's basically the same, but easier to use, which I'm excited for, but also it'd been nice to get a little pizzazz. But that's it. I'm done. All I have to say for now about the Player's Handbook, I will revisit this topic later. But I just wanted to give my thoughts about how I felt about all this stuff. Leave in the comment sections down below anything else that you feel like I should have brought up, anything else that you are interested in hearing my opinion on, be it a specific class change, a specific spell change. Just let me know in the comment sections down below, and I will get back to you in the comment section. I mean, this isn't a big channel, so I'll be able to answer you. But with that being said, if you actually stuck around and listened to all my thoughts on all of these class changes, I really do appreciate it. And I'd appreciate it even more if you liked, subscribed to the channel. And most importantly, also, go down there. Follow me on TikTok. Help me get to 10,000. Help your boy build a career in content creation. Let your boy be able to have a career of just playing D&D and talking about D&D. I think that would be pretty amazing. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Daniel. Go out there and roll some dice with people you care about. Peace.